Damaged Defenders by Sherza. Chapter 23. Natasha and Logan. Natasha could get used to seeing Clint so thoroughly loose and happy. He looked very much like a child that had just got to raid the toy store. It was a good look on him. After lunch, Natasha decided to check out the Avengers gym. Stark had mentioned something about gymnastics equipment, and it had been a long time since she'd been able to avail herself of such things. Besides, Clint wasn't the only one who'd been getting antsy after 2 days of doing nothing, despite very much wanting to do something. Frankly, if Darcy hadn't tased that guard and started bitching out and out, Natasha would have been going on the attack a few seconds later. Which reminded her. Natasha changed her plans for the afternoon mid-stride. Jarvis, main lab level, please. Of course, Agent Triminov, Jarvis said. Natasha ignored the door straight ahead and turned to the one to the right, where Foster's lab was at. The 3 main labs for the 3 groups of geeks were all on the same floor, though how Stargate managed that and insulated things enough so that the other 2 labs weren't subjected to his eardrum-bursting levels of music, she wasn't quite sure. She poked her head in the door. Lewis! Darcy turned from where she'd been idly watching the geeks play with their toys and talking to Thor. Yeah? She said and came over. You've got some fire in you, Natasha told her. You ever take any self-defense classes? Darcy nodded. A few, she said. I generally prefer my taser, though. Doesn't give him the chance to get in grabbing range. Natasha smiled slightly. It does at that, she agreed. Want to learn a few moves? Darcy gave her a wide-eyed look. Dude, are you offering to teach me your super spy ninja moves? Natasha had to work not to laugh at Darcy's rather eager and fairly accurate summation. Yes. Darcy squeaked and bounced. Heck yes! Definitely! Natasha nodded. Go get changed and meet me on the gym floor, she said. Darcy sped out of the lab and joined her in the elevator, splitting off at her floor to change. Natasha went on and headed for the gym, making sure the sparring mats were clear of obstructions. Darcy bounced into the room, looking eager. Natasha eyed her outfit. That the best bra you've got? Natasha asked. Darcy nodded. Yeah. Natasha snorted. I'll show you where to shop for a better one. I get mine there. She knew the pain of being fairly well endowed and trying to pull off gymnastics moves. You needed a damn good bra, or you'd end up being very, very sorry later. Not the most glorious aspect of learning to fight, but it had to be taken care of. Dude, I will thank you forever. I hate how much I wobble even in most sports bras, Darcy said. Natasha nodded. All right, get warmed up and I'll see what you already know. We can go from there. Darcy proved to have a fairly average level of flexibility and a slightly above average knowledge of self-defense moves. She also had a much higher than usual ability to make crap up as she went and readily made use of unconventional items to defend herself with. That bent towards pragmatism would serve her well, as many people tended to get stuck with formalized, accepted defense strategies and couldn't adapt when the shit inevitably hit the fan. Darcy would never reach Natasha's level, of course, but there was plenty of room for improvements. All right, with some work and dedication, you will be pretty formidable, Natasha said. You've certainly got the will to go on the offensive. Natasha favored Darcy with a small smile. Dude had it coming! Darcy said. Yes, he did, Natasha agreed. Now, let's get down to work. Rogue was waiting right outside the door to the jet bay when it opened. Logan huffed a laugh and hugged her. Take it you missed me. More like I wasn't invited to the party the others decided to throw while you guys were away, Rogue said. For half a second, Logan thought she was serious, but a closer look at her face told him she was yanking Sykes' chain. He grinned down at her and ruffled her hair. Logan, came Jean's worried, rebuking whisper. Logan completely ignored her, as he always did when it came to this. He was beginning to suspect that Jean was the reason Psyche was so uptight. If she got her panties in a wad over powers that weren't under perfect control. Though that just raised the question of why Psyche was with her. Guess love made a man stupid. Come on, kiddo. I'll tell you about everything that happened while we were gone. Rogue grinned at that and tagged along behind him as they headed upstairs. They hadn't gone more than about 15 feet when John slouched around the corner. Pyro. Logan greeted the kid. He noticed John mostly because he tagged along behind Bobby a lot, and Bobby had to be surgically removed from Rogue most days. Hadn't taken much to see the kid was angry at the world and needed an outlet for it. He'd clearly not been getting it from the other adults in the mansion. Logan hadn't had a problem dealing with him. Come on, let's head out by the lake, he said and led the way. They ended up collecting Bobby as they went. Logan snorted in amusement at that. Kid really seemed taken with Rogue and not fussed with the whole skin thing, which, given he was a teenage boy, was something of a miracle. Logan might not be able to remember being that age, but he didn't really need to. He had a nose. He knew just how often teenage boys' thoughts headed certain directions. The moment they settled on the edge of the lake, John took his lighter out and lit it, smiling as he started playing with a little ball of fire. Logan and John had a deal. John could play with his fire when they were out here to his heart's content, and Logan would trust him to know his own ability to keep it under control. They'd struck the deal mostly because the kid had a tendency to repetitively click his lighter, which got on Logan's last nerve inside of about 15 seconds. Logan was nothing if not pragmatic, so he decided to treat John like he knew his ass from his elbow until he proved otherwise. Thus far, there hadn't been a problem, and there had been more than one day when John was so agitated he couldn't sit still. Logan had a feeling that was at least part of the problem John had with the other X-Men. He, unlike most of the kids here, had been on the streets for a while, fending for himself, making his own decisions. Going back to being a normal teenager with bedtimes and such enforced by adults was not really working for him, and it made him resentful. He told them about the last few days in detail, a lot more than the X-Men would probably think was wise, but hey, Rogue and John had seen some nasty stuff, and while Bobby was more innocent, he had a tough quarter him. They'd be fine. Damn, John said when Logan finally went to a stop. Wish I could have been there. Logan snorted. We could have used you, kid. All three of you. Weren't no lack of targets to take down, let me tell you. He shrugged. You might get a chance at it sometime. Seemed to be the general opinion that the guys that sent the army'd be back with more at some point. They'd never let us. We're just kids, John said, his tone full of disdain. Might not be when the time comes, Logan pointed out. You're what, a month or so from 17? He pointed at John, then at the other two. And there's not much behind you. Nobody knows when this Joker will come around again, but everyone who thinks he'll be back thinks it'll take a bit. He has a long way to come to try a second time without the portal. So we might be of age by then, John said. And even if we're not, 17 and a bit's close enough to make a good argument. He grinned. I could teach you a few things between now and then, and we could talk to Stark, see if he can come up with something more reliable and less easily lost than a lighter for you to use. Logan agreed easily. Like I said, we could use you when it comes to that. Could use all the kids who can control the mutations, because if this guy comes around with any bigger of an army than the one we dealt with, we'd be in trouble. John and Bobby got to talking about the whole thing and drifted off after a little bit, arguing amiably. Logan smirked over at Rogue. Works every time, she said. Give them something to argue about, even playfully, and they forget the rest of the world exists. If I didn't know for sure otherwise, I'd suspect. She trailed off and shook her head. But I do know better, so they just like arguing. Logan chuckled. Yeah, they do. Does Bobby good, and gives John an outlet for all that energy of his. Rogue nodded, then sobered. You really think they wouldn't mind me over there? Logan snorted. I know it for a fact. I stood there and watched as Stark flew up to all pretty as you please after the fight, fearless as anything, and started joking with him, then bundled him up and carried him off when he switched back to Banner. If he ain't afraid of the Hulk, he's not going to think twice about you, or even me. And the others seem to be pretty blasé about things too. Hank, Kurt, and Warren got a few stares, but that was over quick and nobody treated them badly. Rogue nodded. That's good to hear, she said, especially since I think you're going to want to hang around with him a lot. I'd like to meet him, especially Rogers. More because he'd known Logan so long ago, rather than because he was Captain America.
I'm gonna be heading back up in 2 days for my stint with cleanup, according to Sykes' little schedule. Wanna come with me then?
Logan asked. Rogue nodded. Sure.
Logan, a few moments of your time when you have a chance.
Logan grimaced.
Chuck's calling. Better head in.
Rogue nodded and got to her feet, tagging along behind him as he made his way towards Charles' office, though she split off partway to go watch TV with some of the other kids. Logan closed the office door.
Guessing you want to talk about what I found out while I was in New York,
he asked.
I am more interested in making sure you are handling the discovery, Charles said. Finding something out about yourself after so long would be a bit overwhelming.
Logan shrugged.
Would have been worse if it was bad news. It wasn't.
Well, mostly. He was still not thinking about the whole 70 years ago part of the equation. That was going to take some time to deal with the implications of it. Charles contemplated him for a few moments, then spoke again.
You're considering leaving the mansion permanently. Crossed my mind, Logan admitted. I don't really fit here, Chuck. I'm not a nice man, and it's causing problems.
Charles sighed.
I was afraid of that. I'll make you a deal, Logan.
And here he smiled at using the same phrase he'd first used to get Logan to stay in the mansion 6 months ago.
Stay until the end of the school year, so Rogue's schooling isn't interrupted, and I won't try to argue you out of it, even if I think you could do as much good here as there.
At least Chuck had the decency to not even try to pretend Rogue wouldn't be going with him. Some of the others might not get it, but Chuck did, thanks to the telepathy. Logan nodded.
Fair enough. I have a feeling you might not be the only one headed the Avengers' way, either,
Charles admitted. Logan nodded.
The Cajun seemed right interested.
He agreed.
Well, that is all I wanted to ask. Please don't hesitate to seek me out if you begin to have difficulties, or start remembering things now that you have some place to start looking,
Charles said. Logan nodded.
I'll do that.
Even if he probably wouldn't. But then Charles knew that. Logan waved and then headed out to get a smoke before he prowled the perimeter. He'd developed something of a habit here most evenings. He'd smoke a cigar, then prowl the entire perimeter. Then he'd check the mansion itself, making sure everyone was where they were supposed to be. That this routine meant he didn't get to bed until 2 or 3 in the mornings most days, and thus didn't sleep much was just a side benefit. Logan avoided sleeping when he could, since he invariably ended up tearing the bed to hell and gone and scaring everyone in the same wing if he slept for more than about 3 hours a night. It would be nice if that changed, but he doubted it ever would.